Right after a weekly staff meeting, a staff member walked into my office and told me about a conversation he had with his friend Cheryl. Now, Cheryl was a Jewish agnostic doing pre-med at NYU. Now, the news seemed really positive at first. She shared how she loved our community, was so warm and inviting, how she loved me, how the messages were engaging. But she was confused about one thing. She said, "I just don't know how your church helps me get to know Jesus better." Now, when I heard this, that's when the penny dropped for me. That's when I learned, and in reflection, that creating a missional community doesn't happen by chance or accident. You actually have to be intentional by creating that culture. And how us pastors can create that culture, I think there are three things we can do as leaders that can change the culture in our congregations, whether you planted it or in a denomination or anything like that. The first way we can create a missional culture is by reshaping etymology. Now, etymology has to do with the words we use. Why do we say what we say? And that question we ask is, when people who are far from God come into our congregations, come into our culture, do they understand that gospel communication? Like, for example, John Wesley, when he spoke a sermon in the UK, in the Great Awakening, he preached to his maid with a fourth grade education until she understood the message and drove her crazy because he would speak to her about 7 times until he understood. Does our gospel communication, starting with us, the preaching, and our words make sense to people that are far from God, that have no cultural background in Christianity? So if we want to create a missional culture, we have to change that language. The second way we can create a missional culture is by reshaping our liturgy. Now, liturgy can be ministry expression or even ministry praxis, how we practice our ministry. One time, an unchurched person who'd been attending our church for a couple of months asked me, "Why do you guys sing so much?" He didn't understand why we worshiped in the beginning, why there was a band. Now, contemporary worship has been around now less than 50 years. It's something that we do, but we have to ask ourselves why we do what we do. Why do we do that? Is our ministry expression, is our liturgy encouraging people that are far from God make sense? Does it make sense to them? I even had another person come to me and ask, where is C.S. Lewis in the Bible? C.S. Lewis was quoted so many times, they figure that he must be one of the writers. You see, as the culture gets more urban and more secularized, and as cities grow, we have to understand that people are coming. It's not like 50 years ago where people understood a Christian foundation. People are biblically illiterate, and we have to be slower and explain everything, especially gospel stories, be clearer, and just explain why this is this and why that, and just become simpler and clearer, and create a ministry expression that is actually intentional for people who are far from God. And that's the second way we can create a missional culture. Lastly, the third way we can create a missional culture is we really need to reshape how we do community. In fact, it's how we do church. Jesus said that he had come for the sick and not the healthy. So is our church and our engine of our mission built on reaching people who are far from God, who are separated from him, who are the furthest in our city, in our towns, in our local neighborhoods? We have to create a community, a smaller community, for people to really try to find faith. And it's not going to happen, actually, in Sunday services. I mean, that could happen, but that would be pretty rare. We've learned, and I found out, that reshaping communities by creating smaller groups, and we know about that, but we have to create a safe place for people that are far from God, ask sincere questions, explore their doubts, live among people that really have faith, and experience that love and that freedom and that place to be able to really find who God is in his character. Not what he's against, but what he's for. That's how we do it. We have to, first, creating a missional culture takes reshaping our etymology, why we say what we say, reshaping our liturgy, our ministry expressions, and reshaping the way we do community.